Well, thank you for staying with us. Time now for us to slice and dice the newspapers. The segment is always brought to us courtesy of Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. Here's what they're offering you if you're a man. Prostate screening, gratis, for free. You won't pay anything. If you're a woman, fertility screening, and you won't pay zilch. You'll pay nothing. So just make your way to Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. And the good thing is they're dotted all across the country. Here in Accra, they're at Spintex, opposite the Shell signboard. There's Kumasi Kronuma here behind the Angel Educational Complex. Takrade Anaji State, Tema Community 22. There's Techiman Hanswa and Esiama and Zima. If you'd like to call them, which I suggest you do, the numbers are 0244 867 068 or 0274 234 321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. But joining us this morning, not Dr. Peter Anti, we have Afil Moni, former president of the Ghana Journalists Association. He's with us once more in the studio. Put it there. Thank you, sir. I hope you're well.
By His grace, I'm doing very well.
If you can tell that I sound tired and all of that is because ECG has decided over the last 2 days to stick it into my neck.
Oh, sorry.
Yes. And it's not a general blackout. No, it's not a neighborhood blackout. It's just me and a number of people in other communities. So you know what? Yesterday, interestingly, I spoke to the MD of ECG, Samuel Dubik Mahama. And later in the day, I gave him a personal call about my situation. It couldn't be remedied. So I have my money. I've paid through the app. Have tried their vendors. The networks are down. And so guess what? If you can't purchase electricity credits with your prepaid meter, what happens?
And we're condemned to live in
so
darkness.
My stuff in my freezer, my fridge.
Life without electricity is hellish, to say the least.
If you can tell from my shirt this morning, it's not properly.
But you're looking good all the same.
Yes, we try. So the luck is having some shirts that are hanging in my wardrobe so that even when you don't iron them, you can. But I had to literally find, ingenious ways of charging my phones before being able to come here this morning. And you ask yourself, what kind of country is this? He was saying I shouldn't bash them, but I'm sorry, Mr. Mahama. When things are like this, and I'm not alone. There are so many people in my situation. Those using I think it's called Camstrap 2. And yesterday, the runaround I had to do, going to Roman Ridge, ECG and other places. Nothing. How can we, what kind of country is this? Well, in a country like this, when people talk about paying more taxes, I look at them with, as we say, a bombastic side eye, like, what do you mean?
I believe the authorities are listening and they will address yours and others with urgent promptitude.
I know people with cold stores, barbershops. If you can't top up, how do you work?
Serious.
So this morning, after the show, I'll give him another call. And I'm going to post a few things on social media, Mr. Dubik Mahama. I'm not threatening you. I'm merely saying that your people should do their work and not expect to be mollycoddled or, treated with kid gloves. Do your work. You're doing fantastic, like I said yesterday. But if people can't purchase electricity, power, when they have the money and they pay through your app and it's still pending and all of that, it creates a problem. Yesterday, he was trying to tell me that, but ECG doesn't have a network. They fall on, of course, some of these network providers.
MTN,
that's not my wahala.
No.
You enter into agreements with them. You ensure that they are delivering the services you need. You have the contracts with them. He explained there were some contracts from the past. That's not my problem. You see, that's what we don't get in this country.
Value for money.
If this show doesn't happen, if it doesn't take off, if the right things are not done on the show, people will skip the questions and why was the show not done? Why did this not happen? That's it.
Certainly, yes.
They don't care whether you slept rough, whether you traveled and got into town late,
none of their business.
Whether you didn't have electricity. No. All these things I'm talking about, no one cares. All we care about is the show is going on.
Sure.
So that is the same, and that is responsibility. And I don't know. In our country, we're always trying to pass the buck. Always. And it's sad.
But in this instance, I believe the ECG will proactively address this issue.
So if I don't get light today, I think I might take further action and see what happens from there. Because you can't deny me, it's not a general blackout that I would say, oh, it's a common problem. There's a transformer blown somewhere or something of the sort. But before we get into the papers, Mr. Money, this other subject, you've been former president of the GJA, and of course, you didn't miss the UTV incident. Yesterday, I heard that Kojo Oponkoba, the information minister, wanted to speak on the matter. But what is your take? The GJA responded. He sent another response that the GJA got it wrong and all of that. So the storming of the place, party people involved, Dagmar FM, and the response vis-a-vis this.
To cite.
What is your take? And is the media, is there a subtle attempt to muzzle the media? You share.
Very unfortunate, and already our image as a beacon of democratic accomplishments in Africa and a reference point in terms of media freedom is bleeding, and bleeding profusely. And the only way to stanch the blood flow is for justice to be done. We hear 16 people have been arrested.
I hear there were about 30 of them.
So 16 arrested. And we expect nothing but speedy prosecution of this case. And the perpetrators who willfully found themselves on the wrong side of the law should be made to taste the mighty edge of the law. So this is what I expect from. And
you know some of the interesting stuff I've heard. But these people were not sanctioned by. Do you know prior to this incident, there was a letter written to the show.
So a show,
basically telling them.
Yeah.
What is that? Media censorship, and after that, you have the information minister in his last paragraph address and. Media, especially broadcast show hosts, like we're doing here, must sort of watch it and foster national cohesion. What are we fostering? National disunity?
And he is a journalist. Once a journalist, always a journalist, and he's a sector minister, and of course, we like the speed with which he responded. And some will fault him for not biting enough in his statement. I believe this is a beef GJ has with him, and he's hit back to accuse the GJ of attempting to play to the gallery and not understanding the essence of the statement Honorable Kojo Oponkoba issued.
Did you get the essence of his statement?
Honestly, I digested the statement, and I like the speed, but at the same time, you could see that there was an attempt to be cautious. He was torn between the devil and the deep blue sea.
Where the devil is what? One of them is definitely party.
Yes, one of them is definitely party. So. But I believe this should not obscure the fact that it's a very serious offense, and our laws should be activated to deal surgically with this issue. We always complain about our precipitous decline on the World Press Freedom Index.
Yeah. And that's what's been on my mind since all of this has been going on. Because we're going to decline again.
We're going to decline again, obviously, because the scoring will start in January. And they take account of what has happened throughout the year. And I believe the four incidents we mentioned, the storming of a Dagmar FM, Brinya FM, and they all come into play. And then the end result is that Ghana will exponentially,
drop in the ranking,
and then this will affect our image. And we have our image to protect, and one way of protecting this image to ensure that press freedom is not theoretically adhered to, but practically respected. Because it said that democracy is impossible without a free press. It is ingrained in theory and rooted in practice. And so if a democracy is shiny, it's because the media have made it so.
Yeah.
And so the media should be the last to be targeted in terms of violence. And we also ought to bear in mind, always lodge at the back of our memory at all times, that intolerance and impunity are the causal factors in this incident at UTB. And one thing about intolerance is that it's an enemy to unity, cohesion, to borrow Honorable Upon Nkrumah's word, enemy to unity, and then it's a drawback to national development. And intolerance and impunity also cut from the crowd of and so this will serve as a pedagogue for all of us to learn from what has happened. Because we stand to lose if we don't respect the media. And we'll continue to draw back when people are so intolerant that they'll have the audacity to write to a media organization ordering them how
to run their show.
How to run their show. And this is and what about impunity? Again, what about impunity? If it's not addressed from the root, then ignite a self-propelling and re-energizing cycle, which then becomes hellishly difficult.
If some can engage in impunity, I mean, like we say, what is good for the goose is good for the gander. So others will also feel enabled by that to engage in impunity. And all sorts of impunity are taking place,
all sorts of impunity.
In the country at this point in time. But let's quickly get into the papers. I would like to start with the papers that you have.
Cecilia Dapaah is...
that's the Daily Guide newspaper.
The Daily Guide. Cecilia Dapaah fights OSP, flexing her muzzle. And according to her statement and her lawyers, she's broke and she needs the case to be expeditiously dealt with so that she'll have some money to...
She's also expressed a bit about her deceased brother's account spending. She says the money was supposedly for children's school fees and all that. And I mean, amazing stuff will never stop happening in this country. So, I mean, but she's made her point. We'll see
she's made a point. The
courts will react, or the OSP will also react.
Her points has struck
a chord?
Wrong cross.
Okay.
And the backlash, as usual, is not in her favor. So I don't know who advised her to go on that tangent.
She says she's broke. Interesting.
And that's why the question, and the huge question.
But we are not in her pocket. So.
Certainly we are not in her pocket,
but even in the law, there are different kinds of brokenness, if you like. Someone's broke is not another person. It's very different from another person's.
But given
state of
who she is and her financial backbone, one will take this with a pinch of salt. And there's a very interesting story by Occupy Ghana.
Okay.
Calling for a law to deal with acts of intimidation, monetization, and some of the offenses which characterize electioneering in this country. And monocracy is eating deep into our political space.
You know what that reminds me of? Professor Frimpong Boateng. I think it was just recently that he put that bit out about his own party and how money had eaten into the party to the point where certain people were being pushed simply because of money and what establishment wanted.
And we should not play the ostrich. This is very serious, very serious. Now people are elected not because of who they are, either the professional solidity or because of their integrity, but how deep their pocket is. And this is affecting... Policy men are shying away from contesting elected positions because of the monetary factor.
But Afil, would you put yourself on the chopping board? I mean, there are people who have spoken to me about certain things, but you ask yourself, with how politics is conducted in this country, the vitriol, the lack of intellectual debate. It's not intellectual, it's about who has the sharper mouth, who can insult more, who can... It's about the very base things, rather than having a very enlightened conversation on ideas. Okay, you think this way, but I think that way, like you would find in the more advanced democracies. And we keep saying, oh, they are more advanced, but when will we ever get there if we don't attempt getting there? You organize presidential debates in this country and some will shy away. I mean, and then we've seen some of them and their delivery, so it's mind-boggling. It's all about, like you said, money, show of power rather than the quality of thinking
and ability to deliver,
and maybe even moral integrity. That's something else that we seem not to pay attention to in this country. Anyone can come and, let me not use those words.
So what's happened reinforces the fact that a moral center as a nation is either gone,
I would say it's lost.
Dangerously weak. So we need to do something about this, and let's hope Occupy Ghana will receive the push, receive the support it needs to ensure that this bill is passed into law. We have restored about 3 workers dying under tragic circumstances in underground tank in the eastern region, and we mourn with the bereaved families. These students have happened, but this should serve as a warning to people who undertake risky ventures, because their lives are very, very important. You cannot put a price tag on a single life.
Definitely not.
And again, at times, is elated about where to start on the Abetibi-Lamte interchange. This is a very important interchange which has witnessed a stall in work as a result of funding challenges. We are told that our country's financial situation has affected the completion of this project, and we hope that the $600 million which IMF intends to inject into the economy will also ensure that contractors are sorted out so that they will pay attention to this project, which is of supreme importance as far as committing from one side of the town to another is concerned. So I expect the media to also sharpen their focus on this project, other vital projects which have stalled as a result of funding challenges.
Right.
And we also have a story on the front page of Ghana Times, FAO calling for concerted effort in managing water resources. One thing which springs to mind is the Galamsey menace. Our water bodies are almost gone. Turbidity levels, nothing to write home about. And Galamsey practice is in full swing in all parts of the country.
I don't even get it when sometimes you have the president and other stakeholders go, apart from a pocket of people who will be arrested every now and then and given hefty sentences. I mean, do we not see the others there, the expats, among others, still engaging in Galamsey? Do we not see them? Do we not see what our water bodies are turning into? And they'll go to other countries and be making outrageous, claims. I'm getting so infuriated with our national life and everything going on. It's almost as though there were no law. Or if the law applied, it applied only to a distinct group of people, while some others could get away with murder.
Recently, the law was applied, which ensured that a number of Galamseyers,
the recent one, I think they got about 250
been sentenced to long jail terms. But the rare financiers have escaped the net of justice. So this is something we need to tackle.
And you know why? Because the real financiers also find themselves, in many ways, in power.
Sure.
At any given time.
At any given time. They know how to play their game, make sure they sort out the leading parties. So they are always insulated from tasting the biting edge of the law. This is something we need to... Again, I spoke to the chairman of the Media Coalition Against Galamsey, Engineer Dr. Ashigbe, and he seems to be frustrated, and
he will be.
He's visibly frustrated, And because you push and you come face to face with blocks erected by officialdom. And this was hellishly difficult to pursue the advocacy against Galamsey. But this, as media personnel, we are used to such blocks, so we should use the power we wield and the influence we peddle to fight all the impediments in the way of Galamsey.
All right. Let's quickly get into this next stack of papers and wrap. I'll also go on the international front and bring some interesting stories to your attention, I feel, Money. But the Daily Graphic, achieving economic stability, efficient tax utilization key. That's according to Professor Bokbin, speaking at the Graphic Business Twitter X Spaces Dialogue and Twitter or X Spaces Dialogue. Economist and Professor of Finance at the University of Ghana, Professor Godfred Bokbin, wants the government to strike a fine balance between government's operational cost and growth, enhancing spending. The economist explained that the country's underdevelopment was not the result of inadequate collection of taxes, but about efficient tax management. Sharing his perspectives on the IMF's review of the Ghanaian economy on Graphic Business X Spaces Dialogue series yesterday, Professor Bokbin compared the country's tax to gross domestic product ratio to Malaysia and Singapore. Those countries, he said, had the comparable GDP to tax ratio of about 16% as Ghana, which was around 13%. However, their level of development as compared to Ghana's was better because of course, efficient tax utilization. So you see, there's always the talk about, but we collect this, percentage when it comes to taxes. And he's comparing us to the same countries that are far advanced, same countries who were on the same, pegging with Malaysia and Singapore. Can we compare ourselves to them? But their tax ratio, about 16%, compared to our tax ratio, about 13%, is none too different. Look at what they are doing versus what we are doing. Those are the concerns. I'll give you the opportunity to react to them. Let me just put them together. Neonatal infant mortality rates reduce. Applause for that. Energy Minister calls for sub-regional energy transition policy. And property rate portal accrues 20 million Ghana cedis in 3 months. But other stories I wanted to highlight for you on pages 5 and 9. So, Ouattara removes Prime Minister, dissolves government. Côte d'Ivoire's President Alassane Ouattara has removed the Prime Minister and dissolved his government. The presidency's Secretary General, Abdurrahman Sisi, has said no reason was provided for the unexpected move. I don't know whether he shouldn't have been dissolved himself after seeking an illegal third term. Illegal third term. And our African leaders will sit down. God forbid something happening. Then they will come and say, these things should not happen. But when these things happen, they will not say, they will attend the swearing in ceremonies. On page 9, Israel vows complete siege of Gaza as it strikes. I don't want to get into all the details, but I'm sure you followed the stories. And people are saying that this one, this has never happened. It was on the cusp of the anniversary of Yom Kippur. Going back to some 50 years ago, when that first assault happened, and the Israelis prevailed. And this time, it has happened again. Of course, on both sides, you can apportion blame, both to the Palestinians and the Israelis. But this attack, it's going to have consequences, won't it?
Israel needs to expect Palestinians to hit hard at them, resulting in the death of hundreds of people. And capture.
As of yesterday, over 700.
It's tragic, so tragic. Israel was caught unawares, and you can imagine the response. Total out of proportion of the attack by Hamas. But at the same time,
but even in international law, there's the law of proportionality in international relations, and even when you're going to do something, there must be a certain proportion. But the way Benjamin Netanyahu has reacted, this has never happened before, and calling it an outright war. That raises concerns.
And one cause of huge concern is the targeting of civilian population.
But something that has come up? What Hamas has done, the leadership of Hamas, for example, one of the prominent personalities, he is living adjacent a mosque and in close vicinity to 3 schools. So you see what they have done. They are basically using civilians as a sort of shelter, so that if you hit them, you necessarily hit civilians. That must also be looked at.
Sure. But I expect the international community, U.S., which wields a lot of influence on Israel, to step in this conflict and bring it to a resolution as soon as possible.
Is that even, I mean, this has been one of the world's intractable conflicts. Now we have Ukraine and Russia, but this has been, I mean, this dates back to the 40s, thereabouts. And maybe we should all check out the history, how all of this happened, the claims and counterclaims, dating all the way back to the Israelites, and then the Romans ousting them, and then other settlers, and then people coming back and saying, I mean, we can play that game, but I don't know, if we don't find a resolution to this conflict, I feel someday it could spill over and affect all of us.
What has happened is a warning, a blazing beacon that something more disastrous can happen.
God help us. And sometimes some have pointed blame or accusing fingers at religion for being the center of this. I don't know, but in a way, and that is where religion sometimes, when it becomes too zealous, when it becomes too, the word I'm looking for is not coming, then fanatic.
Fanatic, okay.
On both sides, on whichever side. I'm not singling out any specific group here. I'm saying that peace is a two-way thing. So I'm just hoping that some peace can be found. The Palestinians can get their nation and live in peace, and the Israelis can also have their nation and live in peace. I don't know how it will happen, but I just pray
this two-nation solution has been incubating for years now. And again, it will take, the UN is not as powerful as the US. Again, we expect the US and its allies to exert more influence on both parties.
Right.
To ensure that we see a semblance of return of peace in that region. So vital, religiously and economically. We pray that oil prices will not be affected by the resumption of hostilities between Israelis and the Palestinians.
All right. Right before we go, let me just leave all of you with these headlines. The Finder newspaper, 100-year-old Kolebu Hospital appeals for help. Editors, let's stop writing things like 100 years old, 10 years old. It's not English. 100-year-old. The fact that it's more than one doesn't mean you should qualify it with a plural. 100-year-old Kolebu Hospital appeals for help. The story is on page 11. And the board chairman of the Kolebu Teaching Hospital, Dr. David Nkansa-Dramna, has called on corporate organizations and individuals to complement the efforts of government at the Kolebu Teaching Hospital to address the challenges affecting the hospital. And the challenges are many. Recently, we spoke about dialysis cost and all of that. GJA got it all wrong. That's according to the Information Minister, Kojo Kroma. And is this the truth behind this Bank of Ghana and NDC Chaskila? You can get the stories from there. Finally, Economy Times, economic activity shrinks. Bank of Ghana expects $1.6 billion by end of year. In some 20 seconds, final words, Phil Money, and then we go.
UTB certainly was one issue we should all keep an eye on, and the back and forth between the GGA and the settlement minister, to me, is inconsequential. This does not obscure the fact that a very serious crime has been committed, and our laws should be activated to deal surgically with what's happened at UTV.
Mr. Morning, thank you so much for joining me once more to review the papers. It's always good having you come with your insight, your knowledge, your wisdom, and everything. We're grateful, sir.
It's a pleasure.
And that's how we cap off the news review this morning. This segment always brought to you by Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. Now, guess what? If you're a man, they're offering you free prostate screening. If you're a woman, free fertility screening. Just reach out to them at any of their branches. Here in Accra, at Spintex, opposite the Shell signboard. Kumasi, Kronoma Abuehia, behind the Angel Educational Complex. There's Takrady Anaji State, Tema Community 22, Techiman Hanswa, and Esiama and Zema. Their call lines 0244 867 068 or 0274 234 321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. But just the start of sports with Muftau Nabila Abdullahi. Up next.